Well, someone else who's called it as they see it is the president of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton, who's been at the forefront of exposing corruption within the FBI and the Justice Department. Tom, good morning. We want to get your response to the Mueller report being done and where we go from here.
Well, the political consequences of any dossier-like garbage that Mueller's partisans try to put into the report aside, it's a major vindication for the president. The fundamentals behind the Mueller appointment, the collusion story, has collapsed. And I know Democrats are going to argue about transparency, and we're going to have transparency. That's a side argument. But President Trump is much better off today than he was yesterday. And in my view, we need to move on, but not from accountability here, because you know, we've had this operation by Mr. Mueller going on for well over a year now unnecessarily. They concluded, I will guarantee you, they've had no substantial evidence since a year plus ago that there was any Russia collusion. Certainly there was no obstruction. Yet this operation was allowed to distort our constitutional republic for a year plus and harass the president and impede on his duties as president, impact the conduct of our foreign policy, all as part of a Democratic Party operation. And for the Democrats in Congress, in my view, they're as conflicted as anyone else involved in this attack on President Trump. Because remember, it was their party, the Democratic National Committee, that concocted this dossier that was the fundamental basis not only for the Mueller investigation, but the improprieties by the Justice Department and the FBI in terms of the spying and other activities targeting President Trump.
Paid for by the DNC and the Clinton camp.
Well, exactly. So, you know, their party's credibility is on the line here. So their cries about transparency are should be taken as anyone else with a conflicted interest in this.
And you know who else's credibility is on the line? The FISA court. Now, the FISA court, many of us civil libertarians have been concerned about it because it hears one-sided information. It trusts the government to tell the truth. Now we know the government didn't tell the truth. It withheld critical information. I want to see the FISA court itself open up an investigation of the people who submitted the report for contempt of court.
James Comey, people at the Justice Department
who was responsible for not disclosing the source of the dossier misled the court. If I were representing a defendant, I'd be up there in 2 minutes seeking contempt proceedings, seeking to strike it, seeking to invoke the Fourth Amendment. But the American public must be able to trust that FISA court.
Tom, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, but quickly, the president now needs to take steps to be transparent there. Mueller, there's no more excuse in terms of interfering with the Mueller operation. And frankly, Alan, I disagree slightly. The FISA court has been part of the problem here.
Agreed.
We exposed how, despite the government coming in and asking for 4 spy applications targeting President Trump and his team, they held not one hearing about it. And they know what's been going on here, and they've taken no steps. So we just have to figure out a better way in terms of allowing the executive branch to conduct these so-called spying operations while providing a check. The courts have provided no check, and it's part of the problem.
Look, I've made a suggestion. The FISA court ought to appoint 4 lawyers who get security clearance, who act as the devil's advocate. You know, when the Catholic Church wants to make somebody a saint, they appoint the devil's advocate to argue the opposing point of view. Right. That's what ought to happen here. 4 people with security clearance coming in and saying, no, 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 you shouldn't issue this report. This application is flawed. Today, you don't have anybody on the other side. So the one good thing about this whole thing is you conservatives are now becoming civil libertarians. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for finally seeing the light.
I want to get to Tom real quickly on what Democrats are saying. Brian Fallon, who worked for Hillary Clinton in 2016, has said, look, the Mueller report may be ending. This is what he tweeted. Whatever is in the Mueller report, it ain't over till the Sovereign District of New York, Southern District of New York.
But he wrote
Sovereign District of New York.
It
it's
is
the Southern District of New York sings. So Democrats are now banking on the Southern District of New York, bringing charges against the president and his associates. What do you have to say about that?
Well, you know, the abuse, the baton was handed over in terms of abuse from the DOJ and FBI to Mueller. Now the baton, they want to have the Southern District pursue. Remember, the U.S. attorney there, the political appointee, recused himself, so you got essentially the deep state running the Southern District investigation. But, you know, I'm glad Mrs. Clinton is back here and her spokesman is back here because they need to be asked questions about what they knew and when about this FISA process. Mrs. Clinton is as responsible for what went on here as anyone else here in Washington, D.C. And, you know, frankly, you know, the left is going around tearing down statues of politicians from the 1800s, but we're not allowed to ask what Hillary Clinton did and what she was involved in 2 years ago in this abuse targeting President Trump. This was it's as big a loss again for Hillary Clinton as it was for President Trump. So, look, the Southern District of New York, Alan is right. The harassment of President Trump will continue, but this big lie, and it was a knowing lie put out by Democrats, it was partisan, that he was involved in treason and collusion with Russia, has collapsed. So if they want to pursue low-rent, harassing investigations of President Trump, I guess that's what they'll do. But it should be given with the same skepticism as the other big lies they've been pursuing for the last 3 years.
Is that where they go? Low-rent Southern District?
Well, already what they've done is made life miserable for so many people who were close to the president when they went after these people. And look, these people committed crimes. Manafort, as Judge Ellis said, they were never interested in Manafort. They just wanted to get him to sing or compose. They weren't interested in Cohen. They weren't interested in Stone. These are just efforts to try to get at the president. That's the way special counsel operate, because they come in with a mandate to find crimes against somebody who has a target on their back. I hope that won't continue. I hope we'll have ordinary investigations in the course of events, not targeting people because of their political affiliation or closeness to the president.
All right. Well, Tom Fitton and Alan Dershowitz, thank you so much for being here this morning. Really appreciate your insight. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Former Whitewater independent counsel and author of Contempt, a memoir of the Clinton investigation, Ken Starr. Ken, very good to have you. Thanks for taking the time.
Hey, thank you, Neil.
You know, back in 1998, you had about a 445-page report. We're told that this one was very voluminous. They didn't give a page count to it, but I'm betting it was more pages than yours. I don't know. Does that mean anything?
Yeah, it really doesn't mean anything because, by the way, Bill Barr, who has this report, is going by the books. When you read his letter transmittal to Congress and then he made it public, Neil, there are 4 different references to the regulations under which Bob Mueller has been operating. So everybody needs to remember, Bill Barr is a lawyer, and he looks at the law. Everybody says, well, we want complete transparency. He's got discretion to do that. But thus far, he's a go-by-the-books guy, and what he said is principal conclusions, he's going to share those, and then he's going to consult separately with both Rod Rosenstein and then with Bob Mueller to see what other information. I'd say Bill Barr is doing it exactly right.
All right, so the fact that there are no additional indictments, many have read into that, well, the great line, it's a nothing burger. I always found that to be a weird phrase because even with nothing on it, the burger is compelling. But having said that, what do you make of that, and that means that there's nothing new here, anything that the president need to worry about here? What do you think?
Right, and of course we don't know, but as you and I have discussed this before, there have been contraindications all the way through that there was no collusion. Now, what the country was led to understand is there's a serious question, was there collusion between the Trump campaign and Russian interests? And so now we have at least no indictments, right? We'll see was there information and the like. But there's one really key thing that it seems to me people should feel very good about. They should. Whether they will or not is their business. One, no indictable offenses with respect to any alleged collusion. But secondly, this investigation was allowed to run. There was no interference. That's one of the key things that Bill Barr made clear. So throughout the tenure, remember all the furor about Matt Whitaker as the acting attorney general. Oh, he's going to put a damper on. None of that came true. So the process has been run with integrity, which is what the American people should hope for, and frankly, they should expect.
But was there a leak of the no indictment news, no additional indictments? Was that a leak?
Well, it may be, but we don't know where that came from. Right. But the no indictments, To me, that's a natural inference, Neil, just to be drawn from the fact that Bob Mueller says, I'm through. Now, anything can happen, right? That is something that had been referred back to the Justice Department that didn't require the extraordinary service of a special counsel. But again, this is one of those wait and see moments. But I think it is a time for the nation. I'm leaving politics aside. Others can talk about that. The nation to be thankful that there was no evidence that we know of collusion, which I think has been the case all the way along. No public evidence of collusion. And secondly, that this process has been run with integrity. And so we should all just say, thank goodness this is a rule of law country as opposed to a Vladimir Putin Russia or a Maduro Venezuela.
You know what's interesting, too? About 37 indictments and/or guilty pleas over the span of 2 years. When all was said and done, most of those were on lying or misrepresenting yourself, whether it was Michael Flynn or Paul Manafort or Roger Stone. But a lot of lawyers have pointed out to me, Ken, that no one was charged with directly conspiring with the Russians to help Donald Trump get elected president. And the indictments did not accuse any Americans of conspiring with Russia, period. So what are we to make of that?
Thank you. We're to make of it that the suggestion that there was collusion was, from everything that we've seen, utterly unmeritorious. It just was without foundation. So let's say close the chapter on that. Let's deal with Russia. The real threat is not was there collusion. There wasn't. No public evidence of any collusion whatsoever. But the Russian interests are indeed a threat, as we've seen in the 2 indictments. And I've praised those indictments before that Bob Mueller's team returned against the Russian individuals and the Russian organizations. They're thugs. They're trying to interfere with our elections. Let's bring them to justice and say, Bob Mueller, good job. Adios.
Well, we tried to bring these dozen or so Russian nationals to justice. Of course, Russia isn't going to hand them over to us, so we're make much progress there. But I'm curious about, maybe this is the pro forma part of it that you can educate me on. When you released your report on Bill Clinton, did you have any recommendations that would go to the House and say, all right, this is something you can seize on, the lying about Monica Lewinsky stuff or whatever? Or did you just lay it out there and then they would seize on what they thought to be an impeachable or high crime and misdemeanor offense?
Yeah, well, we said don't release it. We said this report, which was released without having been reviewed, it has very sensitive material in it. So my transmittal letter could not be clearer. Watch out. And I think everyone knew the nature of the investigation was such into perjury and obstruction of justice, but given the background, that it was likely to contain details that you wanted to be cautious about. You wanted to be prudent about it. But the House of Representatives voted. They're the people's house. Everybody loves transparency, so boom, it just goes out. But no, I was very chagrined by that, and I was frankly surprised because Congress does in fact deal in a very professional way with sensitive material all the time.
But they seized on that and felt that, you know, if you lie under oath, that's an impeachable offense. It might be, people have different ways of interpreting already lied, understandably, about an affair. But be that as it may, they seized on that to begin impeachment operations. So I'm wondering here, those who have jumped to conclusions or thought that the Democrats might not be able to fess something out of this, how does that process go?
Yeah, well, the process they'll be looking, the political opponents will look for anything to hammer the president with. So that's one of the reasons for the call of transparency, the 3 o'clock call. Right. What are we going to do now? Bob Mueller has, I guess, let us down or whatever because he did not conclude as the feverish suggestions were that there was collusion, which I viewed as fanciful, certainly unlikely to begin with. So they're going to be trying to find anything that they possibly can. But again, my point is, and by the way, I've got to correct one thing. What the President of the United States, Bill Clinton, was guilty of was included obstruction of justice, and that's why he was found in contempt by Susan Weber Wright. One of the things that is so different about this, Neil, is we've had the President continually attacking the investigation, but not interfering with it. Bill Clinton was subtle. He let others, surrogates, James Carville, Sidney Blumenthal, attack the investigation incessantly and to put private investigators on our private lives. The Clinton White House played for keeps. It looks as if Donald Trump's bark is a lot worse than his bite.
Do you think Donald Trump has asked for a copy of this report, and is that legal for Bill Barr to give it to him?
I doubt that he's asked. I'm sure his lawyers have said we would like to see it. Bill Barr is so prudent that I think he will provide the president's lawyers only, if anything, with that which they need to know that might affect national security.
Ken Starr,
if anything.
Thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
You bet, Neil.
Ken Starr, the former Whitewater Independent Counsel.